At family dinner, the air was thick with pride and expectation. I thought the evening would finally be my redemption, my chance to show my family I had risen. But before the main course even arrived, my mother's hand shot across the table. In one vicious motion, she ripped my girlfriend's shirt, her voice venomous. "You black whore!" Gasps erupted as she dragged Maya by the hair, her heels scraping against the polished floor. With a final shove, she kicked her out into the hallway, slamming the door as though she had removed trash from her table. The room fell silent. My family froze, their eyes darting between me and my mother's smug smile. She smoothed her shawl and said coldly, "Now we can have a proper dinner." Before we continue, thank you so much for your support. Every like, comment, and view means the world to us. We're on a mission to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and we'd love for you to be part of that journey. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and let's grow together. Now, let's proceed. I'll never forget the way the restaurant lights shimmered that evening, reflecting off crystal chandeliers that seemed too perfect for a man like me to stand beneath. For years, I had lived as the family disappointment, the one who never seemed to get it right, who stumbled through life from one low-paying job to another, never managing to stand tall at family gatherings. My siblings had their degrees, their careers, their polished lives that made my mother beam with pride. I, on the other hand, was often the butt of their whispers, the one my mother dismissed with a wave of her hand whenever anyone asked how I was doing. But that night, everything was different. I walked into the private hall of the city's most exclusive restaurant, not as the struggling son everyone pitied, but as the man who had finally turned his life around. The lavish spread of appetizers, the golden utensils, and the attentive staff weren't just for show. They were proof that I had climbed out of the pit they had all buried me in. My chest swelled with something I hadn't felt in years, pride. And yet, the only person who knew the truth of how I got here sat quietly beside me, her presence both powerful and invisible at the same time. Maya never liked attention. From the very first day we met, she carried herself with quiet strength, never seeking validation, never asking for recognition. When I was jobless, spiraling in debt, and on the verge of losing hope, she was the one who sat with me in the darkness, whispering that my story wasn't over. She was the one who made the call that landed me the interview for the job that changed everything. She was the one who set up this very dinner, sparing no expense, yet insisting I never reveal her role. To the world, I had risen on my own. To my family, I was suddenly respectable. But beneath the surface, I knew I was only standing tall because Maya had held me up. And I loved her fiercely for that. Still, that night, as the chatter of my uncles and the clinking of wine glasses filled the air, I could see the suspicion in my mother's eyes. She never could handle it when things didn't add up. My mother sat at the head of the table like a queen surveying her court, her expression sharp and calculating. She eyed the decor, the waiters, the expensive bottles of wine that lined the shelves. I knew her too well. She was doing the math, trying to figure out how her failure of a son had suddenly pulled off an evening like this. My siblings whispered and smiled politely, probably rehearsing in their minds how they would spin this later among their friends. My uncles and aunts looked impressed, though I could sense a quiet doubt lurking in their gazes. And then there was Maya, dressed simply but elegantly, her dark skin glowing under the chandelier light, her hand resting lightly on mine beneath the table. She smiled at me softly, a reminder of why we were here. Yet she avoided my mother's piercing eyes, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to provoke a storm. As the waiters served the appetizers, delicate rolls of salmon, rare truffle spreads, and wine so expensive my family would never believe I could afford it, I felt the tension growing like smoke in the room. My mother tapped her fingers on the table, her gaze locked on Maya, who kept her eyes on her plate. My mother's voice finally cut through the air, smooth but biting. "So, this is the woman you've been hiding." Everyone's attention turned sharply toward us. My throat tightened. I wasn't hiding Maya. I had just respected her wish not to be in the spotlight. But my mother twisted everything into a weapon. I leaned forward, my voice calm. "This is Maya. She's important to me. My mother's lip curled into something between a smirk and a sneer. Important to you? Or convenient to you? Because let's be honest, son. You've never been capable of pulling yourself out of the hole you've lived in. The words stung, though I had heard worse from her before. But the way she looked at Maya, like she was filth, made my blood heat. I wanted to defend her right then, to stand and roar back at my mother for the years of belittling me, for daring to reduce Maya to nothing. But Maya's hand squeezed mine under the table, silently begging me not to rise to her level. So I stayed still. But my mother wasn't done. She leaned closer, her voice now sharp enough for the whole table to hear. Look at you, parading around with this black whore. Do you think you're special now? Do you think we're impressed? She doesn't belong here. Not with us. Not with you. The words landed like knives, and before I could react, she reached across the table and with one swift motion, grabbed the fabric of Maya's blouse. The sound of ripping cloth echoed louder than the chatter had minutes before. Gasps filled the room as Maya stumbled back, clutching at her torn shirt, eyes wide with shock. My mother stood, her hand fisted in Maya's hair, dragging her toward the door as though she were nothing more than trash to be discarded. The sight froze me in place, my chest searing with rage I could barely contain. Maya tried to free herself, but my mother's grip was merciless. With a final shove, she pushed her outside the hall and slammed the door behind her. My family sat frozen in silence, their faces a mix of disbelief, discomfort, and cowardly avoidance. No one dared speak. No one dared move. My mother adjusted her shawl, smoothed her skirt, and turned back to the table with a smile of triumph. Now, she said, settling back into her seat, we can have a proper family dinner. In that moment, my rage boiled over into something sharp and deliberate. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and made the one call that would destroy everything she thought she had. My voice was calm, almost too calm, as I spoke into the receiver. Every eye at the table watched me, confusion mingling with dread. My mother raised an eyebrow, but there was a flicker in her gaze, a flicker that told me, for the first time that night, she felt fear. Because deep down, she knew she had just declared war. The silence that followed my mother's assault on Maya was heavier than the chandeliers hanging above us. Every single person at that table, my siblings, uncles, aunts, cousins, sat frozen in their seats, their eyes darting between me and my mother as though they weren't sure whose side it was safe to be on. Some of them looked embarrassed, others looked entertained, but none of them stood up. None of them even made a move to help Maya when she was dragged like a criminal out the door. That silence burned into me more than my mother's insults ever could. It was betrayal, plain and simple, wrapped in cowardice and disguised as family loyalty. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to hold myself back, but the weight of what had just happened pressed harder against my chest. Maya's absence in the room was like oxygen being ripped away. I kept picturing her face, the way her eyes widened when my mother grabbed her, the hurt that spread across her features not because of the torn shirt, but because of the humiliation. Maya was a woman who had given me back my life when I was standing on its ruins, yet in a single moment my mother had reduced her to something less than human. Rage roared in my blood, but Maya's lessons echoed in my ears. Don't let anger cloud your mind. Don't fight recklessly. Think before you strike. She had told me those words countless times when I was ready to give up on myself. So instead of flipping the table in fury like I wanted to, I took a long, deep breath and gripped my phone. The smug look on my mother's face was unbearable. She picked up her glass of wine, sipped slowly, and gave a nod to my siblings as though her actions were justified. You should thank me, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. That woman doesn't belong with us. You deserve better. You deserve someone with class. She emphasized that last word, her eyes narrowing with contempt. It wasn't about class, though. It was about control. For as long as I had lived under her shadow, my mother had controlled the narrative of my life. She decided whether I was worth something, whether I was capable of being respected. And now, when I finally stood on my own, she tried to drag me back down by tearing apart the one person who truly believed in me. The table remained dead quiet. I scanned their faces. My brother chewing his lip nervously, my sister staring into her wine as though it held answers, my uncles glancing at each other uncomfortably. Not one of them had the courage to speak. It wasn't their silence that surprised me. It was how familiar it felt. All my life, when my mother tore into me, they had stayed quiet too. Tonight was no different. Only now, the target wasn't me. It was Maya. And that was something I could not forgive. My phone buzzed in my hand as I pressed it against my ear. Everyone's eyes followed the motion. "What's he doing?" I heard one of my cousins whisper. My mother scoffed and leaned back in her chair. "Go ahead, make your little call. It won't change the truth." Her arrogance was almost laughable. She had no idea that she wasn't just humiliating Maya. She was tearing down the very foundation of the life she was living, the comfort she had been bragging about, the penthouse she proudly showed off to her friends as though it was hers by right. When the call connected, my voice was calm. "Yes, cancel the service." A pause, then I added, "Everything. The cake, the premium meals, all of it. Cancel them now." I hung up before anyone could ask questions. The room tilted with confusion. Forks clattered against plates. My mother frowned, setting her glass down. "What are you talking about? What service? You're not paying for any of this." She laughed coldly, as though she had caught me bluffing. "This is some silly act. Stop embarrassing yourself." But then, the doors opened again. Maya walked back in. Her shirt was still torn, but her posture was regal, her eyes steady. She was not broken. She was not ashamed. Behind her, the head waiter entered, followed by 2 other staff members. They walked past me, past my mother, and went straight to Maya. They bowed slightly before speaking to her in hushed tones. "Miss, the orders have been canceled as requested. Shall we also inform the catering staff that the cake delivery will no longer be required?" The silence shattered like glass. All eyes swung back to my mother, who blinked, confusion replacing her smug smile. She turned to me, then back to Maya, then to the waiters who were clearly awaiting Maya's command. The weight of the truth began to dawn on her face, but she tried to laugh it off. "What is this nonsense? Why are you asking her? She's nothing here." That was the moment I stood. My voice cut through the room. "She's everything here." I pointed at Maya, my anger now burning cold instead of hot. She was the one who arranged this dinner. She was the one paying for every plate of food, every bottle of wine, every inch of luxury you've been bragging about since you walked in. And do you know what else? She was the one who helped me get the job that turned my life around. Without her, I'd still be drowning in failure. Without her, I'd still be the disappointment you loved to parade around. You humiliated her, Mom. But what you don't realize is that you just humiliated the very person responsible for every ounce of success you've been pretending to celebrate tonight. The room erupted with murmurs. My uncles shook their heads in disbelief. My siblings stared at Maya as if they were seeing her for the first time. My mother's jaw hung open, her confidence faltering. I could see it, her control slipping from her fingers. For the first time in my life, she wasn't the one holding the power. And it terrified her. I leaned across the table, my voice low but deadly. "The dinner is over. The show is over. And tonight, so is your reign over me." My mother's silence was louder than her insults had ever been. She sat there, frozen, as if someone had pulled the ground from beneath her chair. The same lips that had just called Maya a black whore were now trembling, unable to form a sentence. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of losing the illusion she had built for herself all these years. She prided herself on being the matriarch, the one everyone looked up to, the one who controlled the narrative of our family. And yet, in a single evening, that mask was cracking, and the truth was spilling through the cracks. I didn't sit back down. I wanted her to feel the weight of my words. "You've been bragging about me to everyone, haven't you? Telling your friends your son finally made it, that you're living in luxury now. But let's be honest, Mom, you never believed in me. Not once. When I was jobless, you mocked me. When I struggled to pay rent, you told me I was useless. When I came to you with dreams, you crushed them with your laughter. Do you remember the day I told you I wanted to start a business? You said, stick to cleaning tables. That's all you'll ever be good for. My siblings shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My brother cleared his throat, but I raised my hand, silencing him. Don't you dare defend her. You all stood by and watched her tear me down for years. But do you know who didn't? Maya. I turned to look at Maya. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't basking in the attention. She looked calm, almost sad, as though the last thing she wanted was to be exposed like this. But she nodded at me, silently giving me permission to continue. And so I did. When I met Maya, I was at rock bottom. I had lost my last job. I was drowning in debt. I was sleeping on couches because I couldn't afford rent. And while you, Mom, were busy telling the world I was hopeless, she was the one who looked at me and said, "You're not finished yet." She didn't just say it, she proved it. She helped me rebuild my resume. She reached out to people I didn't even know existed. And when I got that interview for the job I have now, she was the one who prepped me for it. She stayed up with me all night, rehearsing answers, calming my nerves, reminding me that I had something to offer. I walked into that interview with her strength in my veins. Without her, I never would have gotten it. The flashbacks surged in my mind as I spoke. I remembered the night before that interview. I was pacing the small apartment Maya and I shared, my palms sweaty, my throat dry. I was convinced I'd fail again. Maya stood in front of me, placed her hands on my shoulders, and looked me in the eye. "You're not a failure. You've just been carrying the wrong weight. Let me help you carry the right one." She kissed my forehead, then spent the entire night drilling me on questions, teaching me how to speak with confidence. When I finally walked into that office the next morning, I didn't walk in alone. I carried her faith with me. And I got the job. I clenched my fist as I continued. "Do you know why you're living in that penthouse, Mom? The one you've been showing off to your friends, pretending it was my gift to you? It wasn't mine. It was hers. Maya paid for it. Maya set it up for you. She told me, your mother deserves comfort even if she doesn't see your worth yet. That's the kind of woman you just dragged across the floor. That's the kind of heart you just humiliated in front of everyone." Gasps rippled through the room. My uncles exchanged looks, my aunts covered their mouths, and my siblings stared at Maya with a mix of shame and disbelief. My mother shook her head violently, refusing to accept it. "Lies," she muttered. "This is all lies. She's manipulating you." I laughed bitterly. If she was manipulating me, why would she ask me to keep it all a secret? Why would she never take credit? Maya never wanted recognition. She told me, "Don't tell them it was me. Let them think you did it. You need them to believe in you again. That's the only reason none of you knew." Because while you were all waiting for me to fail again, she was busy building me back up in silence. And tonight, you tore her down with your own hands. Maya finally spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I never wanted this to come out. I didn't do any of it to be praised. I just wanted him to have his dignity back." She turned to my mother, her eyes full of quiet strength. "But you couldn't stand to see him happy. You couldn't stand to see him succeed with someone like me by his side. And that's your tragedy, not mine." Her words hung in the air like a verdict. My mother's face twisted with anger, but beneath it, I could see something else, panic. Because she realized the truth wasn't just humiliating her tonight. It was unraveling the web of lies she had woven for years. I looked around the table one last time. You all think success is about who shines the brightest. But let me tell you something. Success is often built by those who work in the shadows. Maya was my shadow, and without her, I'd still be lost. So if anyone in this room thinks they can treat her as less, they can leave right now. Because she's worth more than all of you combined. The staff waited by the door, their eyes fixed respectfully on Maya, not me. The shift in power was undeniable. My family had always looked at my mother as the queen of the room. But tonight, the queen had been dethroned, and the woman she tried to humiliate stood taller than all of them. And I wasn't done yet. The air in the room grew heavier with every second that passed. My mother's trembling hands gripped the edge of the table as though she was trying to anchor herself to a reality that no longer existed. For decades, she had lived as though her word was law, her pride untouchable, her control absolute. She could tear me down with a sentence, shame me with a glance, silence me with a wave of her hand. But now, in front of her siblings, her children, her cousins, and the very family whose respect she fed on. Her empire was crumbling. And I was the one bringing it down piece by piece. The head waiter still stood at Maya's side, waiting for her command. It was a simple image, yet it spoke volumes. The same woman my mother had dragged by the hair, ripped at, and called unworthy was now the one the staff bowed to. My mother's voice cracked when she spoke. This can't be true. You're lying. All of this is a lie. Her words were desperate, but the tremor in her tone betrayed her fear. I took a step closer to her, my voice steady, deliberate. The lies are yours, Mom. You've spent years lying to yourself, lying to everyone else. You lied when you said I'd never amount to anything. You lied when you pretended to love me while secretly resenting me. You lied when you paraded around, telling your friends you were living in a penthouse your successful son gave you, when the truth is, it wasn't mine to give. It was Maya's kindness that put a roof over your head. Her lips quivered. No, it can't. Yes, I cut in sharply. And now it ends. I turned to the waiter. Cancel the rest of the meal. Clear the table. There will be no cake tonight. No wine. No celebration. The gasp that filled the room was almost theatrical. My siblings' faces twisted in shock. My uncles whispered among themselves, and my aunts exchanged nervous glances. The waiters nodded, immediately beginning to lift the plates from the table, removing the glasses of wine, clearing away the centerpieces that had only moments ago symbolized grandeur and excess. My mother's breath came in shallow bursts as she realized what was happening. The dinner she thought was her triumph was disintegrating before her eyes, vanishing like smoke. She shot up from her chair, her voice rising. You can't do this. This is my dinner too. My family is here. I faced her, my jaw set. No, Mom. This was never your dinner. It was Maya's. She planned it. She paid for it. She arranged every single detail. You didn't contribute a cent, yet you acted like the queen of the room. But here's the truth. You're not welcome here anymore. Not at this dinner. Not in that penthouse. Not in my life. Unless you learn the meaning of respect. Her face went pale, her body trembling. You wouldn't dare take that away from me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so every word sliced into her. I dare, because it was never mine to give. The penthouse belongs to Maya. She paid for it. She gave it to you out of kindness, even though you never deserved it. But tonight, you showed who you really are. You tore apart the woman who gave you comfort, the woman who believed in your son when you didn't. So yes, Mom, consider this your notice. You're no longer welcome in that home. Her knees buckled as she stumbled back into her chair, her face a mask of disbelief. No. Please, you can't. Her voice cracked into a whisper, her pride collapsing into begging. For the first time in my life, my mother wasn't towering over me. She was shrinking, folding in on herself under the weight of her own cruelty. I didn't flinch. I didn't offer her mercy. You taught me that kindness is weakness. But Maya taught me that kindness is strength. Tonight, your weakness was exposed, and her strength was revealed. This is your consequence. The waiters cleared the last plate. The once grand table was bare, stripped down to nothing but silence. My family sat in stunned stillness, watching as the balance of power shifted forever. No one dared defend her. No one dared speak. They all knew what I had said was true. Maya walked to my side, her torn blouse still hanging loose, her dignity untarnished. She looked at my mother with calm eyes and spoke words softer than mine, yet far more cutting. I never wanted to take anything from you. I gave because I believed he still deserved love, even if you didn't see it. But tonight, you proved something I can't ignore. You'll never respect him or me. So this is goodbye. My mother tried to rise again, reaching out with shaking hands. Please don't do this, you're all I have. I pulled Maya close, my voice low and final. No, Mom. You had everything, and you threw it away with your own hands. Tonight, you lost more than a dinner. You lost me. And with that, I turned and walked out, Maya's hand firmly in mine. Behind me, the clatter of cleared plates and the echo of my mother's quiet sobs filled the room. But I didn't look back, because for once, the future wasn't behind me. It was walking beside me, dressed in a torn blouse, but standing stronger than anyone else in the room. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us.